So a little bit about me. I have the last couple years in my private life worked every month to go deeper and deeper and deeper to study myself as a teacher in the harmonious union consciousness state and to bring complete healing in the healing wave that I was going through after harmonious union. You could see it like this, like the harmonious union point is the point. It's the only concrete, precise, absolute point on your journey that you will experience when you, together with me in co-creation, make the journey. And we will both know when it's there. We will be probably able to say it almost on the second or the minute when that has entered you. And that will make your union real, sustainable, joyful, and not able to be made undone anymore. And all those advantages that you have been hearing me talk about many times by now, I think. Otherwise, you're welcome to go to my channel and watch my videos of the last couple years. And the whole process and coming in that harmonious union point also instigates a healing wave because it just often heightens, like, wow, here is a whole healing that comes out of it, out of me, in the mental, emotional, physical sense. Because that harmonious union point is actually on the inner sense, on the inner plane, other side of life than mental, emotional, physical. And that healing wave is mental, emotional, physical. But, if you would be like, oh, well, but maybe like this huge healing is like tremendously wonderful and I need it and I want it. Maybe I should try to bring that forward in time, in a timeline, already start the healing wave here. And yeah, maybe that would be a good idea. Let's try that out together if we can make that happen for you. So that after harmonious union, there may be less of a healing wave, and the earlier you're after harmonious union, the consciousness state, also ready to be physically together with them and building that actual life together that you want. That's what you want out of it. Let's try that. I think that's a good idea. But for me, I was like doing this huge wave line after my harmonious union moment. And I made that complete. And that was huge. I have said the word huge already so many times, but that's because it really was. And I worked every month deeply on that. And I took like 1 to 2 days and like 4 days around it a little bit to prepare and flow out of it. To like go back to that inner place and work that out further. Yeah, it worked really well. And what I experienced was in this sort of organic, how that all went, with the harmonious union point as an absolute there as well. For me, that was in March 2020. What I saw was that there was, I spoke of a healing wave, sort of a sinus. Okay, I think that really makes sense, like this huge mental, emotional, physical healing, and then it sort of evens out a little bit again. And it's not as much present. Okay. But this whole sinus line or what have you, there was actually another way that I experienced that. And maybe you could say like at the same time or something in this timeline, like there's like this area here underneath it or something. I don't know. It's like a whole painting here, with a timeline and a point and lines and whatnot. But okay, like underneath it or something, like the phases of not my mental, emotional, physical healing line, but my like the inner thing, the inner place where I was, and like the color that that inner place had for me there. And because mental, emotional, physical is actually the outer world, right? So the inner place, there's like an inner changing of color, changing of temperature that happened while this all took place for me. And I can now oversee that pretty much. It's all so interesting, you know? And well, I also had pretty interesting experiences. Like, no, what I want to say is like, pretty interesting insights into what that was, this underneath of it all, this temperature change or something. And it also had like, well, it had like three phases in a sense. And the first was I was like leaving my old life behind. It was like letting go of like, well, this bullshit, you know, and that bullshit. And it just loosened up in my life. And then there was a period in which I would have said to myself, like, but now I have let go of a whole couple of things, but so now it should actually like be good, isn't it? Right? But that wasn't necessarily always so. It was challenging in a way. It was challenging in that deeper space. Well, the deeper space was maybe experienced as some sort of, oh, this is the challenge, but the challenges were like mirrored in the outside world, in the mental, emotional, physical, as like circumstances in the world and in my life that I felt like, oh, but I don't really like that. I thought I wanted to leave that behind, or I hoped that I already left that behind, kind of feeling, you know? And then that wasn't so. And that was like a phase in which I was like working that out. So I was actually working out things that were not per se fully let go of when I left everything behind there and went into this other phase, because they had hooks in my inner world, and I needed to be gotten rid of these hooks, right? I needed to be cleansed of these hooks. I needed to be, these upsets needed to be cleared. It was a period of purging, of, you could also say karmic release, like certain hooks in my soul of like being too much busy with the outside of things, of like arrogance, well, different things, you know. They needed to definitively unhook themselves from me. Like last time ever, never to return. You understand? So that's how you cleanse your karma, and it never returns. That's it. And there was this period in which I needed to unhook myself from a whole couple of things triggered by a whole couple of situations in my life. And I needed to gently but firmly actually do that. You know, it was work. I needed to work on that. This is going to sound so unattractive, but I'm just trying to give you a little bit of what is going to happen to you, and just, you know, give you some insight in the real thing. Will this also happen to my twin flame? Yes, it also happens to your twin flame. You're together, you know, in union, especially when you're after the harmonious union consciousness state. You're fully, you know, moving through these movements sort of together, okay, waving through the movements together, in a similar way. Like the essence of what you're working through is the same, but it might have another personal color for you and other personal circumstances to you, to individually you. So yeah. Unhooking myself from all these inner things. And then there also came a time in which I knew that I had pretty much ended that phase of the unhooking. And then there was this time that was like the ending of that. That was like 1.5 year or something. And that ending of it was also the beginning of something else. I mean, that also took 1.5 year, you know? And then I got to that place beyond it all. And that was a whole arrival, the arrival phase. So, like an example, I have spoken about some examples. Maybe I'm going to say the same things now, but I think there were good examples that I'm also willing to share. And one of them was that, like in this middle phase of needing to unhook myself, for instance, I worked on this weird problem that was already going on for years with my below neighbor in my apartment, that there had been an involuntary, not actively done by me, but still coming from my house and in my house, leakage from my dishwashing machine under my kitchen, through the kitchen floor to his ceiling. And that had been taking place for years, well, unknowingly, until he saw it at his ceiling, but he also had not been living there for quite some years, first having had a renter there. A renter, is that the right word? Well, you understand what I mean. And later it was like empty for a couple years, I think, and then he eventually saw it. And there was also another leakage problem. And I mean, I had never on purpose, caused that, but it was still fully my thing and my responsibility. It came from my house, and I needed to resolve that. And that was like hugely triggering for me. And also the way that went and the way he dealt with me, and it was hugely triggering for me. And that was a hook that was actually about, I mean, I hear myself trying to defend myself, but at this very same time, it was so my thing and my problem, and my whole problem was in that, because it means that water is symbolic for the feelings. So I was leaking my feelings, and also for energy, that's also the same. So I was leaking my energy over my boundaries. I was, leaking money, leaking attention, leaking love, leaking sexual energy to places where it didn't belong. And that's what I had been doing in my life earlier all along. Giving my time and energy to people that were not my twin flame. Giving my time and attention to clients that were hardly paying, or bosses that were hardly paying. Which, like, the same thing. It's like losing your energy to something that is not right, that is not giving back. It's like not having the correct boundaries, not being congruent with myself. So, and that's why it was like so shameful, so hurtful for me to need to face myself with that leakage wound in my housing situation. It was so painful for me because this whole thing, having grown up in a narcissistic family, that means that I did not have any established boundaries because my boundaries were overruled by the narcissistic parent, and you were not allowed to have boundaries. I did not know what that was. I never established any of them. And that wrecked my whole life. And it was very difficult to get a grasp on that. Anyway, and this brought me in the past in all these situations that I now would see were all completely mistakes, like all these non-twin flame people that I had given myself to. Like, what nonsense is that? Complete and utter nonsense, complete waste of my energy, and a complete reason why my twin flame was not with me, because I was leaking my energy all the time, and I was leaking my money, and I was leaking my effort. Anyway, so it was deeply shameful for me to face the leakage in my house. So that was a hook that needed to come out of me to be able to finally establish the correct boundaries as the divine feminine and as a sexual being, which just means a being, a human, in my union, in my life, under the light of Divine Mother. And I needed to face that in this leakage wound in my apartment. And it was just excruciating for me. And I had to pay, and I had to come up with the money for it, because eventually, I had to pay the damage. And I mean, that sounded reasonable to me eventually, right? Anyway, so that's like one of the hooks that had to come out of me. Even when I maybe had thought like, but I already worked it out earlier, And I got it. But and I'm in harmonious union, am I not? I am. But I needed these couple of years it was to unhook myself there definitively. And that's the good thing, because you unhook yourself and it will never return. That's it. That was the end of that. And your soul is now freed from it. Also, let's say I die tomorrow and I come back. It can happen. It probably will. And then, not tomorrow, but in principle, I'm human. And then I won't need to go through that lesson anymore, right? It is done. And it's the best opportunity to work on such things on earth, not when you're dead and you're only spirit. It's not a good place to work on these kinds of things, these kinds of hooks, these kinds of karma things. Anyway, so that's an example, of what happens in that time of unhooking myself. And what I also did was I did mother healing and father healing with Divine Mother and Divine Father. There is a whole bunch of that in my e-courses. And that's a whole bunch that is actually very fit for exactly what I'm now talking about. So if you think you're going through that, you can go to my e-courses. Yeah. More about it another time, I think. There was a time at which this ended. And then the ending was like, it all came to a screeching halt. I don't know, I'm just joking a bit. And that took 1.5 years, I was like, oh gosh, we're going to the end here. You must be kidding me. And I was so afraid suddenly, like working through my fear, to go to the good place where there's no hooks anymore. Can you imagine? Anyway, so that's what happened. And I worked my way diligently through that as well. With lots of inner work, and every month going to my homework place where I spent my time and my money to going deeper and deeper and fulfilling everything that I needed to do there. And that was amazing. And I met some amazing people that helped me there. And there were even people from beyond that don't have a physical body at this moment that just like unbelievably came to me and helped me to give me the final push. Oh, that's emotional to me. To give me the final push to go there, and to let go. And yeah, we're still working out like the last things of that whole movement. So here's the deal, here's the thing. Why I wanted to talk about this as well, and that is like, what does it mean to live in heaven as a twin flame? So you might think that the idea of hell, purgatory, and heaven is pretty old-fashioned shit. And it's like, damn, that's some moralistic bullcrap from very long ago. I'm happy that we don't live there anymore and we don't need to think about these categories anymore. But I have to be honest with you. Personally, I feel these words are actually very fit for what I just described. I do feel it like that. You can give it another name. Give it another name. I don't know. So, how I lived before, it's like hell, right? And where I unhooked myself, that's purgatory. And where I come now, and I needed to work through my resistance to arrive there. Funnily, that's heaven. Give it another name. I don't mind. What's your name for it? The shitty world. Undoing my karma. Peace in the divine mind. Well, I don't know. There it is. Other names. Same idea. I think it pretty much communicates the right idea. Hell, purgatory, heaven. And heaven, yes, so you come into the heavenly mind. It's a place in, it's all a place in the mind, you know, in the divine mind, where you're a twin flame in union. That place. And then in principle, in the heavenly place, in the heavenly sense, in the divine mind sense. But you really work your way through that until you're really there. And then you're really there. You're really arriving in heaven. It's not a joke. It's not a dream. It's not bullshit. So, you know, and you also see sometimes like people try to maybe, it's logic actually also, like people try to put their interpretations on me, like, but Petra, she also must be in desperation about her twin flame because I am. That's what someone might unconsciously think. But I'm not in desperation about my twin flame, right? I'm in heaven now, even after all these movements that I just tried to describe to you in words. And that's a real distinct place where I really live. I have a music CD album that I created with audio poetry. It's a collaboration with a fellow poet of mine because I'm actually in the Dutch language spoken in the Netherlands, in Europe, an acknowledged literary author, mainly known for her poetry. So maybe you didn't know that, but there you go. And we have this collaboration, and the album is online, and I think it is accessible from my website. And we do have like the 3 tracks that are Purgatory, Hell, and Heaven. Well, there you go. And this whole album is built to listen to tracks that he made that sound like hell and then purgatory and then heaven. No, I think we made the order actually some sort of funny. I don't know. What was it then again? Gosh, maybe we should do another video about that one. I do use music a lot, you know that, you know. It will end the video just in a second as well. And that is the Heaven soundtrack. So there you go. It's like a soundtrack specifically made for me by that friend, FN Sounds. Yeah. So that was all a foreshadowing of the real inner work, twin flame inner work that I would later be doing, have now fully completed. And that was exactly about these musical and poetry things, which was what my career as a poet was always already about. It was about the real life spiritual experiences and it has all been made come true. I live in heaven, and that is really a place where you might not understand what that is like, and that's okay. I will bring you there. And yeah, that's what it means to live in heaven as a twin flame. And that's where twin flames in a harmonious union ought to live, because that's where they in principle live, in truth already live, but you have to make it come true in your physical actual life, right? And only then is it real, right? So I hope that helped. Love from Petra.